Hey everybody, welcome back to another great episode of Nerds Make Sense. As always, I'm Josh.
What's up everybody, I'm Ted.
And today we have an extra special episode for you. We've been wanting to do this for quite some time, and we thought that, today being May the 4th would be, this is just the best time to do it. And today for this episode, we have an extra special guest with us, our first guest ever. And to introduce him, I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Ted.
All right, man. So this episode I was told that we were doing. I had to go find a very, very important person to come do this. Why are you laughing? So I had to know this guy for a very long time. So it's the man, the myth, the legend. It's Manuel.
That's me.
Hey, welcome to the show, Manuel. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Sounds
Well, we're especially glad to have you. So, now I take it you're a huge Star Wars fan, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. I grew up on that.
Yeah. Oh, I think all of us here at the table did. So, just real quick, what has Star Wars meant to you?
Star Wars. So Star Wars was a lot of things for me. Like when I was really young, everybody had seen the movies. Like it was just like I don't remember ever actually sitting down to watch the movies, but I knew the movies already. Like so, that stuff was ingrained in my head. When people talk to Star Wars, you're like, yeah, lightsaber, Obi-Wan, Luke Skywalker, Leia, Jabba the Hutt, all that. Like you just remembered all of it already. And then that was when the prequels came out, and I was like 5 or 6 maybe, and like everybody was hyped for those too. And like I was 6 or 7, so like. The hype was real for me. I was like, yeah, more Star Wars. Yeah, and let's go.
Okay, so you were born into the prequel trilogy. Whereas I actually grew up with... I can't say I grew up with the original trilogy, even though I kind of did. I grew up more with the re-release, and I think, Ted being only, a year younger than me, probably is about the same. I remember in the early 90s, when they first started doing the remastered re-releases in theaters... going to see that for the very first time. And it's just, and like you said, it's absolutely amazing. It's meant so much to, I think, all three of us. And, it's probably one of the biggest reasons we're here doing this in the first place. Mm-hmm. It's why we are the nerds. That makes sense. So what about you, Ted?
Yeah, I grew up with Star Wars. I remember, I always remember that in my mom's room she had like all her like VHS tapes. I don't know if you guys don't know what a VHS tape is around this time.
There might be a few that don't.
Like a DVD, but a block. And tape and stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a few people out there that don't understand what the word rewind means.
So, yeah. She used to have it, and every time I looked through there, she'll always show me that. She'll have Star Wars, the New Hope on VHS. She'll always tell me like, this was like one of the best movies out at the time.
Oh yeah.
And I was never able to watch it as a young, but when I got like around, I don't know, like I think 8 or 9. I don't remember. I was pretty young. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I don't really remember. I think the next time I remember watching Star Wars was probably a long time later. Where I think it was episode 1. I think because I don't really remember. I don't remember watching the other ones after New Hope, and then after I seen that, I think after that, for my birthday, I think the next year after that, I think they got me like the other ones. And I remember watching it, and I'm like, oh, dude, these are hecka long. I remember watching. I had to keep rewatching Return of the Jedi over and over because I kept falling asleep on it.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, that was a long one.
Yeah, I will admit, when you're a kid, Return of the Jedi is probably not the most action-packed movie. I mean, it can drag a little bit at times.
It's more drama. I feel there's a lot because it's real tense.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. So and then after that, Star Wars has been for me just like an adventure. That's what I liked about it because they were always on the go. You're not in the same spot unless there's certain circumstances, I guess you could say. You're not in the same spot a lot. You're always moving around. That's what I really liked about it. It was always this never-ending story, I guess you could say, because it always went place to place. It's followed new characters. That's what I liked about it. It's always something that, and then I grew up into sci-fi more off of that. You know, a lot of other stuff branched off from that. You know, and then that's where I am at today. So it's always been an adventure for me.
So, off the top of your head, favorite Star Wars movie?
Favorite Episode 3.
Episode 3, really? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I just really like that one. Like, I mean, there's a lot of other. I'm not gonna say like it's the best one, but for me, I like that one. I don't know. I guess because I had like a best friend at the time.
I mean, I guess if you're gonna pick a prequel trilogy one, you're probably the best off going with Episode 3.
I didn't say Attack of the Clones. No, but yeah, but there's a lot. You know, there's other ones that are way better than that. But that one, like for me, because I went to the movies to go see that with my dad and then my best friend. Then that game for the PS2, if you guys know what that is.
Yeah, I remember
Episode 3 with the Jedi dueling, you know, so it's like, it was like a time.
The first time I saw Episode 3 was actually, it was thanks to you. I borrowed your illegal theater rip copy.
Flea market rip. $2.
It was horrible quality. So it was just a terrible experience watching it the first time.
I watched that's the same way I watched Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was great.
Manuel, how about you? Favorite Star Wars movie?
Dude, that's tough. That's really tough.
Come on.
So the one that's like most near and dear to my heart is honestly Episode 1.
Really?
Like, yeah,
that one's cool.
Wow,
because that's the first one I saw in theaters. Like I'm not gonna say it's the best. I already know it's not.
That would be the first one I would have seen in theaters too. Because
that's the first one I went to go see in theater. Because like to me, like Star Wars had already existed. You know, like it was just already a thing, and then like it came back, and I had a chance to see it for the first time with everybody else who got to see it for the first time. Mm-hmm. So it was new to all of us at the same time. So Episode 1 was that for me.
Yeah. And
it was just like, I don't know, it just defined the whole experience for me.
Well, for me it was, and it still is, Episode 4. It's the first one I saw in theaters. Mm-hmm. And I was, maybe, I couldn't have been more than like 5 or 6 at the time. But it's the one that got me started with the franchise. And it's the one that got everybody started with the franchise, really. At least when it first came out. But, yeah, so, I mean, it's something about Episode 4 for me. It's just, it's fun. It's a little more lighthearted than a lot of the others. Mm-hmm. Especially when you talk about Episode 5. Or even Episode 6. It's just, it's more lighthearted. I mean, yes, of course, you got the Ewoks in Episode 6, but, I mean, there really aren't a whole lot of people that like the Ewoks. Let's be fair. So there's a lot of people that say that the Ewoks were the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars.
Yeah, cool.
Until the most recent movie, which we'll go into later.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was just, I mean, it was the first introduction into the Star Wars universe. You know, the first time you ever heard about Jedis, the first time you ever saw a lightsaber, the first time you ever saw a lightsaber duel, which until, the last few years and all the other lightsaber duels that we've seen in Episode 1, 2, 3, and now 7 and 8, it was probably the coolest thing anybody had ever seen. I mean, you got a guy all dressed in black leather and armor with a red laser sword wielding going up head to head with an old man with a blue laser sword, and it's really the first time you ever see something like that, at least done to that quality. But yeah, so for me it hands down, it's Episode 4. So now, just so everybody knows, this is going to get long. Okay, there's a lot of stuff for us to talk about today. So we will be breaking this into 2 parts. So the first part, we are primarily going to cover the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy and various topics that involve those. And then in the second part, we will be talking about the more recent films, 7, 8, 9, the sequel trilogy. So without further ado, let's get our first topic for this one. So, one of the biggest things that people absolutely hate about the prequel trilogy is the introduction of midichlorians as the explanation to why Force users in general are as powerful as they are with the Force. And that was probably one of the very first things that divided the fan base back when it was first introduced. And just, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. What do you guys think? Do you like having that in there, or is it something that should never have happened in the first place? Let's go ahead with Manuel first.
Okay, so because the first episode 1 was one of my not quite my introduction into actually being into this stuff. It was a little weird when I first watched it, because I didn't really question it. Because it was one of those things that kind of flew over my head when I was little, and it wasn't until I went back and watched it a few more times after rewatching the original trilogy and having the whole prequel trilogy after rewatch those two, that I kind of understood why people didn't like it. And I have some beef with it, not as a concept, but just how it was pulled off. Because I say this all the time, and a lot of people I follow who talk about movies and stuff say this all the time. But Star Wars is less science fiction and more science fantasy, and so
definitely
because it follows a lot of tropes that old fantasy things do. Instead it being lightsabers instead of laser guns, the majority of the time is more like swords, and how they're all cloaked is more like wizards and stuff like that, and how there's this mystical force instead of it being I don't know, literally anything else, but
just straight magic.
Yeah, and so when you give a more scientific grounding to something, it stops being fantasy, and so there's the air of mysticism around it kind of goes away. Because you're okay, well, if it's a physical thing now, then why don't we know all about it already? Right. If we know there's a physical thing we can attach to it, we should be able to study it in detail and have all the details down.
Good. Hey, really good points. What about you, Ted?
Well, it never bothered me when I first heard about it and found out about it. It never bothered me. I knew a lot of people were upset about it. But I don't know, for me, I always felt that was it wasn't right. Not it should have never happened, but when they said it in the movie, I guess for me it was I don't know about that. They were setting up for something, something else, for a different explanation. Mm-hmm. So I always felt like that, and that's what I went with.
Sorry, everybody, that would be my dog.
Scared. Yeah, but so I went on with that, and then later in the animated show when they they'll show the whole thing about how the Force is basically alive and stuff like that. That's when I was that's what that's how I seen it.
Yeah.
That's how I always seen it. That it was always something chosen or given, and it was alive, and it could pick and choose, and it had a mind of its own. It wasn't just a scientific thing.
Kind of a little religious.
Yeah, I mean? I guess so.
Not entirely
Well, they do call it a religion.
Yeah, they do, but not entirely But
yeah, so that's how I always felt. It never bothered me because I knew there was something more to it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I never let it brew me oh no, I understand when people, Manuel said, I understand when people were mad about it.
Yeah.
But I just had a different way of looking at it, because I always knew there was something more to it. I knew it wasn't just numbers. It had to be some other way.
Yeah.
Everyone else thought. And then later when I seen that, I was oh, okay, that makes sense. That's how I see it. That's how I always felt like it was.
Mm. Those very good points. I mean, for me, it was when I first heard about it. I was still young. Of course, episode 1 came out in 1998, 99, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was 8 or 9 myself, and I didn't really think about it much. But now, now that I look back on it, now that I'm older and I've seen the movies countless times, it's, it kind of ruined that little bit of mystery that the Force had. I mean, yes, you get a little bit of the explanation of what the Force is from Obi-Wan Kenobi in episode 4. And he talks about it's, this energy field that flows around and through all living things, and it connects us and it guides us as we go through our lives. And that was just when you first hear that, it's so fantastical. It's so full of wonder, but you're wondering, you're left with an idea. You want to know more about it, but yet when they gave us the explanation of the midi-chlorians in episode 1, it was like, that's all it is. That's what you're going to do with it now, and it's a little bit of a letdown, to be honest. But, I don't think, I know some people say, oh, it ruined the franchise. No, I don't think it did.
It wasn't that big of a deal.
No, it wasn't.
I feel like they could have did it better. I feel like for some reason they wanted to add, like, a power level scale, like a lot of things do. Like, almost everything, like, when you have, like, people who are powerful, they're like, well, how stronger is this guy? And before this, we just have, like, different variations of how people use the Force. Like,
the whole thing was they wanted to make... They wanted to explain why Anakin was so powerful in the Force. They wanted to explain why people revered him and feared him at the same time. And why it worried the Jedi Council so much when it came to his training. And, I get that. I get wanting to do that for the fans, especially the newer fans who may not have seen 4, 5, and 6 because they were like, oh, those are old movies. I don't want to see those. And, all of a sudden, this very... And here's the thing. With the introduction of the prequel trilogies, it was such a departure of film style from the original trilogy. It automatically appealed to a younger audience. And I'm not, looking back on it, I'm not sure that that's the way George Lucas wanted to go. I mean, obviously, he wanted to go that way. He wanted to expand on the basically the Jedi fight scenes and stuff. But I don't think he was necessarily looking to turn it towards a younger crowd.
He honestly, because I've watched a bunch of things where people talk to George Lucas about the prequel trilogy, because that's such a hot topic. It's like, well, what was he thinking when he did the prequel trilogy? And, like, why is it so different? Like, why is it this? And then, like, you find out that during the original trilogy, he had all these crazy ideas he wanted to do, like, where the main character wasn't even human. He was, like, an alien. Han Solo was, like, also an alien. And just all these crazy things with, like, his editors and, like, or whoever, like, puts him in check. Because, like, they write his checks and are funding this movie. They're like, no, we don't think that's going to work. And so he was working under limitation. And I think that's why it came out so well is that, like, he I'm not gonna say he's a bad writer or anything. He is definitely a creative force, but just because you have all this creative power doesn't mean you should be using all of it 100% of the time. Because if you go off the wild and creating something entirely new, like, you're gonna lose people because you're not grounded anymore.
Yeah.
And then with the first trilogy, he was given more free reign because he's like, oh, he's the god of these movies already. He made them, so we're just not going to question whatever he wants to make. And he kind of went off the walls. You know what I mean? So, like, that's why we got, like, a lot of stuff. I'm pretty sure if he was in check, like, somebody would have told him, like, oh, this doesn't really fit, or, this doesn't add up just as well. I feel like he needed, like, just like a second opinion, but I don't think anybody was willing to do that.
Yeah, and one of the things about George Lucas is I'm a firm believer of the fact that he had no idea where the story was going until he got there.
Maybe.
I mean, why else would you have and you got to go back to the kiss between Leia and Luke. It was like, why, if you're gonna make them brother and sister? That was something that was an afterthought.
That could have been like a thing to, like, throw them off, or like,
they're never gonna, I think you're giving George Lucas a little too much credit.
I mean, I like to believe it that way, because. But then again, if it was that way, you have to live with the fact that, like, I made a brother and sister kiss on television, and I made everybody, like, super excited for it. They're like, they're gonna go bone, and then you find out that they're related. You're like, oh God, I have to check my values.
Well, I mean, he could have gone a lot worse with it.
Oh,
I mean, he really could have had. I mean, it kind of alluded to something that there was maybe just a little bit more going on between Luke and Leia. Because, I mean, hell, especially at the end of episode 5, there's months where Han's just gone and it's Luke and Leia all alone. I mean, I don't mean to really honestly go this disgusting with it, but
yeah, I don't know. They're off screen. Let's keep them that way.
Let's leave it there and move on. Okay, so next topic. And this is probably, I don't know if it's as divisive as other things, but Hayden Christensen's overall acting performance through episodes 2 and 3. Personally, I'm not a fan. I've grown a little more used to it over the years. So it's like I can put up with it to get through the movies. But it's like, and then when you have the way he's portrayed in the Clone Wars animated series, and then you see, obviously you see him in episode 2. He's still a Padawan. He's still learning. You can understand, he's been told that he is the chosen one, the one that's going to bring balance to the Force, which was probably something they never should have done in the first place. Because that's a lot of weight to put on one person.
Yeah, it is.
But, I mean, of course he believes it, because he's been told it is basically the entire time that he's been in the Jedi Order. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of understand a little bit of the whiny crybaby attitude that he has throughout episode 2. But when you see the growth in character, and obviously he's voiced by a completely different person in the animated series, and then you see the reversion back to the whiny, oh, it's unfair, crybaby Anakin in episode 3. It's disjointing, and it's off-putting, and it's just like, no. I mean, I realize the Clone Wars came out afterwards. The Clone Wars animated series came out after.
Yeah. Both of them. Yeah, there's 2.
Both of them came out after episode 3 was even done. But, I mean, still, it's just, when you go back and you look at it now, it's like, why would you have that character growth afterwards, only to see it reverted back in episode 3? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of Star Wars fans that don't even watch the animated series. They just go directly from 2 to 3.
Yeah.
So it's not much of a huge change for them. But to be honest, the Clone Wars animated series was done so well, which is why they're getting another season, mind you. You kind of need to see it. I mean, if you are a true Star Wars fan, I suggest you see it, because it is done incredibly well, mind you. I think the only voice actor they actually bring over is the one who does C-3PO.
No, yeah, I mean, because I don't
even think they bring over Frank Oz to do Yoda.
Yeah.
I think it's somebody completely different.
Yeah, I think it is. I think so too.
But yeah, the only one is Anthony Daniels. They bring over to do C-3PO.
Yeah, like Manuel said, I don't think he's doing anything.
I think that's just
I mean, so it's just, I don't know. What are you guys feeling about it?
I feel like I've been talking a lot. Well, what do you think, Ted?
Dude, I liked him. Like, I liked the actor who played him. Who played Anakin in it.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like him. Like, some things, like, you say when he's complaining, you gotta remember, even in the first episode, even in episode 1, when they told him about bringing him on and training him, like, they told him, like, dude, he has no training. He's gonna be out of check all the time.
Yeah, so, they pretty much told him that they didn't want him.
Yeah, they didn't want him because, he was too old already, even though he was, like, what?
He was, like, 8.
Yeah.
Well, he was 9 in episode 1.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a 10-year gap between 1 and 2.
Okay.
And he's 19 and 2, and then it's a 3-year gap between
2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yeah, because so like even then they were telling him like no, because he's already too old, because they already start training them for Jedi younger.
Oh, very young, yeah.
Yeah, so like all that
we'll
stuff.
Get into that in a little bit.
All that stuff, it was like already like he wasn't gonna get that. That mental training does not be a crybaby. I don't know if they do that, but I'm pretty sure that's part of it. like not to complain,
to
have this
control your emotions.
Control your emotions, you know. So when they already just skipped all that and he just became his Padawan at the end of the first one, like that makes up for a lot of like you got to come to expect that. Yeah. That's what I say. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because, they said this.
Yeah, because when they take kids into like the Jedi Order, they're so young that they don't know what the real world is yet.
Yeah.
And so they're so much more susceptible to whatever the Jedi are going to tell them because they don't know any better.
Yeah.
But Anakin, at age 8, 9, whatever we
he's
just
already
said,
smart.
He's already seen so much. Like he's already like
that boy was a man. He was a slave.
Yeah. So he's seen slavery. He's been a slave. He's seen just the corrupted underworld of racing.
Yeah.
That they kind of hint at, you know, and just everything. Like he's seen a lot. So
yeah. So with him growing up being like, you know, that's not fair, well, because his life was basically not fair. Like it makes sense. So with that,
keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, with that, yeah, basically because you know, so when you say he was crying and everything, that's basically what it was. That's how I've seen it. Like I already knew that it was going to be that because they already told him in the beginning that you know, oh, he's not going to be like all the other ones.
Yeah.
And so when so also like even when I think it was I don't know if it was episode. I think it was episode 2. I think when Obi-Wan went to talk to Yoda when he was training younglings who were younger than Anakin because they were like little.
Yeah.
At the time, he was like, "I need help on this map because it's gone." The solar system. So the solar system was gone, and Yoda's like, "I ain't helping you. Yeah, you over there, you little kid. You tell him." What would you do? And he was like, and then I remember
they come up with they gave him like such a like just a general answer, but that's like the funny thing about that is like that's just how kids are.
Yeah,
like because we look at things weirdly, and so like when you just lay it out really simple, and the kids are like, well, why don't you just do this? I'm like, oh, I could just do it that way.
Yeah, so like even then at that age, like you know they answered a question for Obi-Wan, who was he a Jedi Master in that one? I think he was.
He was Anakin's master.
Yeah,
he was Anakin's master, but he hadn't achieved the rank of master in episode 2.
So that's
he was still a Jedi Knight.
So you can see like the difference in training between two. So you can kind of see how being trained at a young age to where that young boy was that younger than Anakin to that. So that's how I see it.
And so Obi-Wan like wasn't ready to take it on it.
He was.
I mean, he just achieved the rank of Jedi Knight himself.
Yeah, and then his master died.
Yeah,
and then he's just like, well, I'll be the new master with this.
Yeah, because Qui-Gon wanted. Because it was Qui-Gon's idea, so he wanted to live on his master's idea.
Yeah,
and things would have been very different if Qui-Gon had survived and been able to train Anakin.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hayden. There's so much happening with Anakin in episodes 2 and 3 that I don't think it was easy to convey in such a short time.
He did have a lot going on,
and I think George Lucas was trying to make him do too many things at once. So like, oh, you need to be sad, you need to be angry. These are all the things on your mind. You need to express all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like well, it never felt like he was just dealing with the situation at hand. It was like I'm dealing with this. I left my mom. I'm in love with this princess. I'm in love with her, you know, and she's
be in love.
She's too old. I'm a Jedi, and I'm the chosen one. It always feels like he's doing the whole journey in his head every time he's dealing with a new thing. He's like, let me add it to the list of shit I got to put up with today, and like that's the attitude you get from him, and that's why it comes off as whiny or irritated all the time. And I'm like, but I feel like that's the direction they gave him. Like they never let him be human as a character.
Yeah.
So like, and when you're given that, like, and he, like, there's only so much you can do. You know what I mean? Like as an actor, when they give you that kind of direction, like you need to be as angsty as fucking possible. You know. And so he's like, I guess I'll go for it. I guess. I mean, and George Lucas is like, yes. I'm living all of my angsty dreams through you right now. And like that's just what he had to put up with. You know. But like, as an actor, because I've seen him in other things, and he's a decent actor. I'm not gonna say
he's not bad,
and he's like really likable. Like when he's not in that role, because like I mean I like Anakin because of what Anakin is, but like if I just looked at him as a character in those movies, I was like, oh, he's a douche. Like why do I even care? But you know.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you said. There's a lot going on with Anakin, and I understand that. I just think that, I don't know if it's the effort that Hayden Christensen put into it or lack of. Mm-hmm. And it's just, for some reason, all of what he was trying to convey it didn't come off right to me. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I know there are a couple other people that also think the same thing. But I mean, yeah, it's just, to me, it just didn't come out the way it should have. Like, I see how it could have come out better, and I also think I think part of that faulting needs to go on George Lucas himself.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the paradigm shift of what was focused on from the original trilogy being mainly focused on the story and the development of characters, to the focus on effects and fighting and
because back then, like,
CGI in the sequel trilogy or the prequel trilogies, it's just, I think that did a disservice to episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, it's like how I told you before. It's like watching the old Planet of the Apes compared to the new ones. Like the old Planet of the Apes, you follow the story. There's no background music. There's no CGI. These people are wearing the monkeys.
Yeah, like the practical effects.
Yeah, and like there's like, and you have to piece it together. You got to think, okay, what does that mean? There's no like super duper hint. There's no freaking review on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, in those older movies, they did a lot of the dramatic takes where they like zoomed in and zoomed out on something, and like that was your cue to like, oh, I need to focus right now. Yeah, like something they just showed, because like remember in the original Planet of the Apes where he found his friend and he had that scar on his head, because they just like lobotomized him or whatever, and it was like da da da, and then like zoomed in on it, and you're like, oh, yeah, like they cut out his brain, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so like when episode what was it 4, 5, and 6, that's how it was, and then when episode 1, 2, and 3 came out, that's when CGI and the special effects were there.
What I think? What I think affected this is because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are really close friends, and what had come out just a few years prior was Jurassic Park. Oh, yeah. And that was hailed as just like the master of special effects. But the thing there is that they did a hybrid of like CGI and practical effects. Like they had puppets and animatronics, and then they also had computer generated graphics, and they blended so seamlessly. And I feel like George Lucas was trying to make something like that, but without putting in like all the effort. He's like, well, we could just do it all on computers. Let's just do everything on computers. Like,
sorry, George. There's only one Spielberg.
Yeah, I'm like screw it. That's just all
and even
computers.
Spielberg's not really Spielberg these days.
Yeah,
but there's still only one Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
As much as you like to try. All right, so I think we've discussed that one enough. So moving on. From there, one of the biggest things that I definitely want to talk about is why are the original trilogy 4, 5, and 6, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, why are they so loved by fans? What is it that endears them so much? Is it just because they were the first ones, or is there more to it than that? What do you guys think?
I think. So, like, I can break it down into 3 different points of view. So when I did go was taking college classes, we talked about the hero's journey as like a generic story structure, and then like how a lot of movies from the 80s took that like this old framework that's been used for like ages, and how it connects so well to people. I feel like that has a lot to do with it, because when you get to the prequels, those elements kind of tear away and they're not there as pronounced. Then there's the fact that most of the people who are still like incredibly into it right now have always had it in their life, like me. Like I had come into a world where there was Star Wars, and there had never not been Star Wars, so like it's like a constant in your life. You know what I mean? And then of course there's always gonna be just the nostalgia that comes with that. That because you're like, yeah, it's Star Wars. It's the Star Wars. It's what everything else is based on. You're always going to judge it in comparison to the first one you saw, and not like like, oh well, I like this one better and not the old ones, or for whatever reason. That usually like almost never happens. I've never seen anybody do that with almost any piece of media.
Here's the thing: I know some people that actually prefer. I mean, overall, they sat there and watched the prequel trilogy 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6, and they prefer 1, 2, and 3 because they were born into that, like you.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say that I prefer those movies. Like I have a strong fondness for those movies, but I won't call them good. Like if somebody's like, oh hey, like it in the very rare occurrence, and this has happened to me once in my life, they're like, oh, I don't know anything about Star Wars. Like, where should I watch? Should I start at episode 1? I'm like, no, please don't. Because if you like episode 1, like if you actually do like episode 1, you're probably not gonna like anything that comes like 4, 5, and 6. You're probably not gonna like them as much. And if you do like 4, like if you start at 4 and you do like it, like you'll sit through 1, 2, and 3, whether or not you actually do like those movies or not. You know what I mean? Like they're not that bad. Like you'll still like watch them. You're like, okay, well that was an interesting Star Wars story, and it's not as good as what I was introduced on. But I mean, it was whatever.
And here's one of the biggest things too. If you watch episodes 1, 2, and 3 first, it ruins the biggest and best plot twist of the entire franchise.
Yeah.
And that is the revelation that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the weird mishmashed order of watching the movies?
It goes like something
4, like 1, 5, 2, 6, 3. I think
that's not the one I
it's like the first one of one of them and the first one of the next, and then there's another one where it's like 4 and then 5. Or no, it's 4, 1, 5, 2, 3, 6.
Okay, well,
there's a lot of them.
So the one that I've heard of is you watch 4, 5, then you jump back. Yeah. After getting the big plot twist that Vader is Luke's father, you will then watch 1, 2, and 3 as kind of like an extended flashback, almost.
Yeah.
And then you watch 6 and you go from there. Mm. And then, if you want to throw in Solo and Rogue One, you can. If you want to, you don't have to.
The thing is, too, when I saw some people like splice together the first bit, one of the first bits of A New Hope, where he's first talking to Obi-Wan, he's talking about the Clone Wars and everything, and then Darth Vader and Anakin and whatever, and then they splice together the images, like without the sound, because the voice acting is kind of weird part of it. Like if you just look at the footage, it looks really like awesome, and so they just splice in that with the dramatic music of that scene already, and it looks and sounds incredible. Like he's talking because what he's saying doesn't entirely match up with what's happening, but you like based on the context, you can kind of piece together what is happening. He's like, I met your father, and Darth Vader did this, and then it's him fighting Anakin and like having to almost kill Anakin, and you're like piecing together like, oh, he's not telling the truth here.
Just remember, remember he's telling the truth from a certain point of view.
Exactly. Like, he's not telling the whole.
I had to throw that in. I'm sorry,
but it's like he's definitely like hiding like key aspects of the story, but you're piecing together exactly what happened, and it's I want to say even more powerful. And you're like you can just skip the whole first trilogy really, because there's not a lot there substance wise, like story wise. There's a lot of world building there, and like that's one I've had friends who say like that's why they prefer the prequel trilogy. Like I like all of the world building and the politics and what's happening on all these other planets.
I'm sorry, if you're watching a movie for politics, there's something.
He wants to be a politician, so
okay.
I mean that's like
okay. So if he starts seducing like the next military prodigy to be his right hand man, then we know to watch out for the coming of a new Emperor Palpatine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Let's hop over to you, Ted. What do you think? Why do you think that the original trilogy is so beloved?
Well, it's because it's like basically like I said. Well, for me, what I like about it is like the story. Like I told you, you always like it's like what Manuel said. There's a framework for it. Mm-hmm. It works and like it entices you, and you're always on this journey. You go the up, and then you go the down, and then you go back up. And then you got the whole ending. But the prequels, I guess, it's like a lot like what you said. Like it's just there's the stuff people don't like about it. Mm-hmm. There's the number like 2 is like basically like some love story. Half the movie, like I remember watching that, and I was kind of
bored. Not to mention the CGI is bad.
Yeah, and then 3 is probably like the best one out of the 2 out of the first 3 for me.
It definitely is.
I feel like you could have like a half hour spliced together of episode 1, and then like another half hour spliced together of episode 2, and then just the entirety of episode 3.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't be missing anything.
And that'd be like a good movie in itself.
Yeah, because in my mind, episode 1 and 2, like episode 2, there was a war, there was the Clone Wars, right? The whole thing, right? And then episode 1, you had like the bad guy, and you had Darth Maul, and you had like this person, the finding of someone that you didn't know was there, like Anakin, so far on the Force. You had the whole Darth Maul and the Sith introduced, like the fight with the Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. In the 2, you have the Clone Wars, and then the 3rd one, you have everything the last 2 had, but take out the stuff that wasn't really needed. You have the war, you have a love story, and a conflict, and something you didn't know about. Anakin becoming to the dark side, finally embracing, it happening. Then you have, like, the Palpatine being Sidious. You have all that, that 1 and 2 like had in half and half. They just put together to be 3. That's how I always seen it. That's why I always like 3 more, because it had everything I liked about 1 and 2, but just without the stuff I didn't like. And that's how I seen it. That's how a lot of people see it. Not like that, but like there's so much stuff wrong with it. Like something like the love story, and then the midichlorians, and then the pod racing. Like some people didn't like it, like you said. It just had like a lot of stuff. Maybe it wasn't everyone's cup of tea.
Because in the first trilogy, there's not a lot of negatives. You know what I mean? Like when you look at it, there's not a lot of things you don't like. 'Cause, I mean, with any movie, even if it's like one of your favorite movies, you're like, oh well, I don't like this part, or I don't like that actor for this role, or whatever. But with the first trilogy, there's not a lot to nitpick. I mean, of course, there are some things to nitpick, but there's not like a lot of big, like gaping flaws in it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Whereas in the first trilogy, like there's a lot of moments that can ruin it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, though, and I want your guys' opinion on this. Agree or disagree? The 4, 5, and 6 have held up incredibly well over years. Mm-hmm. They're not dated at all. It's like sure, if you go back and you watch the original theatrical release, you see the little flaws. You see how things were done back then. Like one of the biggest things I remember from my VHS copies of the original Star Wars and then Empire Strikes Back is, if you notice during the battle scenes, like when they're attacking the Death Star or the Millennium Falcon is trying to escape the Imperial fleet after escaping Hoth, when they're flying through space, you can see boxes around the ships where they've essentially been pasted onto the star field.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, yes, if you're going back and you're watching those old versions, you can see where it is kind of dated. But with the cleaning up processes that they've done, if you watch it with the remastered special effects, I mean, there's just it holds up so well.
And like there's some of the, like I said, some of the practical effects in those movies like hold up pretty well. Because of course you go back to like what we said before, like Planet of the Apes and the wearing mask. You can obviously tell that it's like prosthetic and like they have stuff on their face. But for like some of them, like it doesn't matter that much because
the acting quality, completely distracts from that.
Because they work with it so well. Like they don't make something that's like where somebody's obviously wearing like a heavy get-up on their face or whatever. They don't make them move a lot for whatever reason. Like that's fine. Like you don't need to. Not every character needs to be like incredibly physically dynamic. And then the shots that I think are incredible from the regular trilogy is the shots of the ships. That's practical effects. Like those are like models of the ships.
Yeah, those were actual models
that they like slide in over this like hand painted space like background and people don't realize that. I'm like that's Like that's a thing. That's a physical thing. You could actually get touched it if you were there in production that day.
And there's a quick little shout out here. I can't remember the name of the channel, but there's a channel on YouTube that actually goes through and they recreate all of these like epic scenes from movies and stuff. With stuff that they've got around their house, or little things that they can actually get their hands on.
I think I've seen that.
And it's, I mean, they've done a couple of Star Wars scenes, and it's just it's impressive what they're able to do. So I mean, it's just, and I agree with you guys. The whole practical effects. The way the films were just put together at that point in time is just, it's timeless. It like I said, it holds up over the years. But one of the things that I think that just absolutely makes, why they're so loved is because of the fact that 4, 5, and 6, and I've said this before, they're story driven. They're not special effects driven. The special effects are there to enhance the story.
I get lost in them, honestly. Like I keep going to Planet 8 because when I watched Planet 8 for the first time, I was just like,
yeah.
I'm like, it's over. Oh god.
The character progression of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia over the course of those 3 movies is done so well that you believe the characters, you fall in love with the characters. If you don't see them, then you miss the characters, which I think is a lot of, except for maybe a few actors here and there in the prequel trilogy, it just lacked. There was, like I mentioned,
they threw too many characters at you in the prequel. I feel like and you never really know in the prequel trilogy. You never really know who's your character, like who you're supposed to focus on, because they eventually split stories in for a bit, and they do it a little in the regular trilogy, but it's not a lot. Your main focus is always
nearly as heavy.
Luke is your avatar into this world. He's who you're experiencing this through. It's his eyes.
Yeah.
But in the prequel, you're well, now we're Anakin, now we're Obi-Wan, now we're Padme.
Exactly.
And then there's a few scenes where it's just Jar Jar talking to the Senate or whatever. I'm I don't care.
Don't get me started on Jar Jar. Do not get me started on Jar Jar. I'm sorry. I absolutely hate with a passion Jar Jar Binks.
Oh god. Yeah.
I love Jar Jar.
He's the most annoying, the most unnecessary character in the history of Star Wars.
Man,
and you're talking about the franchise that gave us Rose in Episode 8.
You're gonna be mad when Jar Jar the evil guy.
Yeah.
No, he's not. We're going to talk about that.
The Emperor laugh was Jar Jar.
Oh God. we will talk about that, but that's for the next part.
You said gotta die.
That would have been perfect.
And I think I know we've mentioned the animated series, but I don't know if you guys remember the episode of the animated series where Jar Jar goes with 3PO and Padme to the one planet where she's trying to negotiate the truce, and then the guy that she's known for years turns against her shortly, and then Jar Jar stumbles into one of Anakin's cloaks that are on her ship, and they think he's a Jedi. I honestly think that was a make fun of the whole Jar Jar is the evil big bad guy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That great.
But okay, so now that we are started on Jar Jar, and I have to pose this question: was he necessary? Are the Gungans themselves necessary to the story? So, Manuel, what do you think?
Jar Jar, as he was done. See, the problem with how they did Jar Jar, his character is fine. Him being there is okay. The Gungans are okay. It's how they decided to do them. Because I'm okay, you can have another race living on this important planet, and you guys don't get along because they live in the water and you guys live on land and this and that, and you have this one person. Because as a character, you're oh, I live in exile because my people hate me, but you guys need me to get into that place, and I guess I can do that for you, even though they might kill me on the spot. That's compelling as a character. But then they made him an idiot. Like, and that's why he got kicked out. He didn't get kicked. Like, he didn't get kicked out for being like a coward or like escaping duty or like a deserter. Yeah, anything like that. Like, and he's like, oh no, I'm just a freaking idiot. So they had to kick me out because I kept killing people or something. And like,
they kept destroying things.
Yeah, and
on accident.
And it was such a sign of the times, like that. When you say that those movies are dated, like he's one of the reasons why it feels dated, because that was such a like it wasn't even funny at the time, but it was grasping from comedic concepts of the time.
It was slapstick.
Yeah,
he was purely slapstick.
Yeah, and that's what like was in movies at the time. Like if you look at movies in the 90s, there was a lot of that. Like, and it just didn't fit well. Like, it's not that there couldn't be any comedy in Star Wars, but that did not need to be there.
I blame George Lucas in part for the loss of subtle humor.
Yeah,
within movies.
It was bad. Also, I don't know. Like some people say it's racist because they cast this like big black dude to play Jar Jar, and he ended up being the most hated character ever. I'm like, I feel bad for him. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do. I honestly, I feel bad for the actor who had to play him. But I'm sorry. I absolutely hate him.
Yeah.
What about you, Ted? Do you think he was necessary? Do you think he adds to the story? How does he add to the story if he's necessary?
Well, I think he does, and not for like the movie, but I guess if you look at the point when before us, like whole little getting rid of what was canon and what is canon, I guess you could say, in the world of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Just to, like for the friction, like Manuel said, there's people living in water, there are people on land, they don't like each other. And Jar Jar got kicked out of there, but the Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon need him to go back in. You know, and he is dumb, but not like dumb like as a character, but dumb as like he is dumb. Like and so just for he's the what patches them up and gets them to go. Basically he brought them there and they helped each other out and it progressed for that point in the world, like in the world of Star Wars. What are they, Nabooians? What are they called? The
Naboo.
Yeah,
they're just the Naboo.
The Naboo. Yeah, I was gonna say because it didn't sound right.
The Naboo. The Naboo.
And then his race, Jar Jar's race is the Gungans.
The Naboo and the Gungans are like cool now, because this idiot got us together and brought us here and we got this done, and that's how I seen it. I mean, I know you said a lot of other stuff that he doesn't need to be there, and I mean, yeah, some of the comedy, like, I think you said comedy it's not supposed to be in Star Wars. Like,
no, it's not that it's not supposed to be in Star Wars, because there is a place for comedy in Star Wars. You see it throughout
but the three
original trilogy
shouldn't have been in Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, you literally, with Jar Jar, you literally put Harry, Moe, and Curly into one friggin' character.
Yeah, I'm not saying like that. That's what was necessary, but Jar Jar, I think he is.
And here's the thing, real quick, guys. I'm going to point out a few things, and I want you to honestly, when I'm done, I want you to honestly say that yes, Jar Jar was absolutely necessary, or I want to see if you guys agree, at least in a little bit, agree with my point of view. Okay, so we have Jar Jar, who comes across Qui-Gon after they escape the droid battleship and make their way down to Naboo. He eventually shows Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to the Gungan city, which sets them on a path eventually to Naboo and rescuing the Queen.
Yeah.
They didn't need that. It easily could have just had them travel to the city, rescue the Queen, get off on the planet and head to Tatooine, and you save, I mean, sure, you'd have to fill that 15, 20 minutes worth of movie right there with something else. I mean, hell, you could even if you're going to keep the Gungans as a whole, which I'm actually going to make an argument that the Gungans just were absolutely not necessary at all. They didn't even need to be created. But if you had kept the Gungans and lost Jar Jar, they could have easily had already either known about the Gungans and therefore knew how to make contact with them, or, they could have easily come across something else that led them to the Gungans. Which would then, you get your underwater scene with them, always a bigger fish thing, the whole...
Yeah. So, one argument I want to make is, so imagine Jar Jar didn't talk like, I used to think of this and that. Like, imagine none of the Gungans talk like that. Because that's the one thing I know everybody hates about it. So let's take away that from them as a whole. And I want you to imagine.
And honestly, it wasn't even that bothered me.
Because I feel like the Gungans and that whole little side plot there was there to show, because now we're in a time in Star Wars before the Jedi have been eradicated. And we need to know, what do Jedi do besides be like these monk type characters? Like, what do they do? Like, because they're not exactly police, they're not exactly like actual knights who go and like fight wars and stuff. You know, even though that doesn't end up happening. Galaxy. But yeah, but then they're like, oh, you know, so they get sent on like a peace brokering mission between the Trade Federation, I think it was, and then Naboo.
Yeah.
And then that goes south. But then like you see them still like make peace with this other race, and like how they, you know, come and talk and negotiate and everything, and how then later in the movie they're like, oh yeah, we need you guys to fight with us because, you know, if the Trade Federation comes and they just take over, then, you know, they're gonna get underwater soon enough, like we just did. And, you know, like it's a good story. And then as far as Jar Jar's character, like I want you to just imagine the scene where he comes back into the Gungan city and he just strolls in, like everything's cool and fine, and they stick him up and he's like, hey guys. I want you to know that is a scene directly also cut from episode 5 where Han rolls into Cloud City and he thinks it's all cool and shit, and then they're like, he's like, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
I get
so
what
like,
they were trying to
he could have been a very charming character, and he could have been like everybody's favorite. Honestly, like I feel like if they just rearranged some elements, he could have been a fan favorite character.
Yeah.
But they put a target on it.
Oh yeah,
they really did.
And I mean, here's the thing too. After that little bit of him introducing Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to the Gungans, he serves no useful purpose whatsoever. Because all he does is either fall flat on his face, gets his tongue stuck in an energy binder, and then, of course, you know, allows the creation of the clone army.
And then I think a lot of it is too because they use him as a mini plot device. Like he doesn't actually push the plot forward, but he causes an issue that then pushes the plot forward. Like I don't know if you guys have watched The Walking Dead, but you know how people hated Carl. Yeah, it was like, oh, Carl didn't listen. Carl didn't stay inside the house, so bad shit happened. That's what Jar Jar was. That's what they made him do. They're like, oh, well, Jar Jar's stumbled in this thing. Now this guy wants to kill him, and now we gotta like make him not die, you know, and all this other shit. And that's what he is. Like they just did too many things to him to make him. Like,
he was the fall guy essentially.
Yeah,
he was the one that and I like the way you said that. But I mean, just there's so many other ways. Like I said, the if they kept the Gungans in, the Jedi could have found their way to the Gungans some other way. They didn't need Jar Jar. Obviously, he helped. Like I said, he helped. He did not help at all in Naboo. He did not help on Tatooine. As a matter of fact, he got them into more trouble on Tatooine than anything else. You know, once again, like what you were saying, when they came back, I mean, sure, he led them. You know, once again, he led the people to the secret hiding spot of the Gungans in case their city ever got invaded. You didn't need that. Somebody else could have already known where that was, or they could have scanned for frickin' life forms. Hell, they got sensors on the damn ship. Use them. Yeah. One of the things too, and then his little bit of a role in episode 2 where he is the one essentially speaking on behalf of Padme in the Senate and grants emergency powers to Palpatine that easily could have been filled by somebody else who was just as susceptible to Palpatine. But one of the biggest things is the Gungans the whole battle scene that they used to distract the droid army, it wasn't necessary. Because you didn't need to do that. If you're going to have a small strike team that's going into the city to liberate the starfighters and then try and retake the throne room, you know, because here's the thing. The whole mission was to get them to the starfighters and then get the starfighters up into space
to take down
in order to take down the control ship, so that the way the droid and the whole them trying to capture the throne room. Yes, their intention was to capture Viceroy Newt Gunray, but it was another distraction. And, you could have made it more suspenseful by, upping the ante a little bit, making the odds a little more in the favor of the droid army by having the droid army still in the city. And here's the thing, too. That droid army that goes up against the Gungan army wasn't even deployed. Yeah. So who's to say they would have been deployed in the city? So the whole thing where you see them blow up the one tank, they blew up one tank. It's just, the whole thing was just unnecessary. It didn't need to be. It added a fourth freaking storyline to the end of the movie there that just did not need to be.
Yeah. One thing I think too, because a lot of people point out that, especially George Lucas himself likes to say that, like, I'm trying to make, it's like poetry, it rhymes, because he's trying to copy his older movies. And one thing he was pointing to was that as the movies went on from 4, 5, and 6, that there was like more and more things happening concurrently. Like in the first one, it was just them taking out the Death Star. In the second one, it was I forgot what happened to that one. There was two things happening.
Trying to escape the second one, they were trying to escape the Empire and survive to regroup.
And then and then all that stuff. And then in the third one, it was kind of three things. There was like what was happening with the Ewoks, and there was the things happening in space. There was Luke on the other Death Star with the Emperor, and there was these three plots happening concurrently, and that's what he was trying to do in Episode 1. But it didn't line up as well, and it wasn't as compelling because nothing led up to these things. It was just like, I gave you guys 3 objectives. Let's watch you do all 3 of these objectives at different times. And it didn't go the way I think he imagined it would in his head. Like he thought, like, it's going to be more suspenseful because, like, well, they're counting on these guys, and then they're counting on these guys, and then they're counting on the first guys. And it just doesn't really.
Because here's the thing: if you eliminate the Gungan storyline in that last bit of the movie altogether, then you can dedicate more of that 3-way fight scene. Because you've got because
then it would only be 2 really, because like most of the capturing the throne room ended up being the fight with Darth Maul. Like that's
well, no, because that was separate. Because if you remember, the split point really was when they reached the hangar and the pilots got in the ships, took off, went off after them, and then Darth Maul shows up. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon go after Darth Maul. They take care of him, and then Padme and her forces go and try and take the throne room. But if you take away the Gungans, then you can actually shift more of that to the fight between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul, where, yes, the fight was great, the choreography was great, the special effects were great, but it lacked. The hardest thing is trying to articulate what it lacked, but it definitely lacked something. Because it lacked
because like when they split it, like I said, the problem with the prequels is like you're not sure who you're supposed to be following, because Obi-Wan honestly didn't say or do a lot. You know what I mean? And then Qui-Gon said a lot of stuff, but it was always like offhanded stuff that really, like, it was always like some weird things that old people would say, like, there's always a bigger fish, there's always this, and they're like, okay, that's some stuff a mystical old man would tell me.
He was a dad.
And that's the thing too. You eliminate the whole Gundam part of the story, and you can actually focus more on the character development of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I think one of the failings of Jar Jar was that I think he was supposed to be our ground, like, because he didn't know anything about Jedi, he didn't know anything about space conflicts, like, because this is all new to us as well. Like, we didn't know any of this, like, overarching plot that leads into the movies that we've already seen. So he was experiencing these things for the first time as we were, but he wasn't very likable, and he was also kind of stupid, And he it didn't click well. Where you're like, well, if I was there, I wouldn't be doing something as stupid. Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't trip and make an alien angry at me or whatever, but I wouldn't have gotten into so much trouble so quickly. And so, like, them making that your tie-in character as a viewer, like, definitely was a downfall.
Yeah, that was definitely not the way to go. So is there anything else we want to say on that one, or are we ready to move on?
Well, I mean, I feel like you only touched like the first movie.
Well, okay,
because we were talking about the Gungans.
There really wasn't a whole lot.
They don't even come up. besides episode 2, like just
there's the scene where Jar Jar basically hands emergency powers to Palpatine, and like I said, you could have had any senator do that. You could have had anyone do that. It didn't need to be Jar Jar.
Yeah, it wasn't, because even like that scene wasn't even wasn't even conveying that Jar Jar's an idiot, Jar Jar's stupid. Because I think like
we already knew he was an idiot. We already knew he was stupid.
Because I think everybody was
so
already,
we understood
like,
why he was so we understood why he was so susceptible.
Yeah, and because like everything had just laid out that way. They were like, it seemed that was the necessary cause of action. It was like, oh yeah, we need to get Palpatine the emergency power because we're in war right now, and all this and all that. And so I mean, it wasn't even like they didn't even make him look more stupid at all. Which I don't know. It felt like they were trying to give him some character growth there, but it didn't really involve him thinking or doing anything really.
Yeah. And then, of course, I think he was seen real quickly at the end of episode 3 when they're taking Padme's body to the mausoleum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where they're where they intern her.
Because he's supposed to be like a friend.
Or no, do they burn her body? Don't they?
I think so. I don't know.
I think they cremate her.
I feel like everyone's body.
Yeah, that's the thing they do, like Vikings. Yeah.
But yeah, so there really wasn't much to really talk about, and that's another thing too. That's another reason why I think both Jar Jar and the Gungans just simply aren't necessary to the Star Wars universe, because they're not utilized after Episode 1.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a failing of those movies, is that they absolutely could have, especially because they took that time to earn that trust and to like kind of unify all of Naboo. Like they could have came up more, like we could have seen them in some of the. Because I don't think they even had like spaceships. Like, I think they were strictly in underwater.
Yeah, they had underwater vehicles which kind of resembled spaceships.
Yeah, and like if we saw them in any like the dogfights in space, like anything like that.
It kind of would have been cool to see like a dogfight underwater. That might have been something
like,
cool.
Even back there, because I mean we did go to other planets and we did go do other things. Like even if they were just strictly ground warfare type troops, but the fact that they were also fighting would have been, like it would have, I think, built up more of a good feeling with them as characters.
Yeah. Why weren't the Gungans put on the front line in the Clone Wars and save some of those damn clones, man?
Yeah,
Dang. They're trying to kill someone.
That's a little racist.
Yeah, I know. That's a little racist to me.
Hey, it's a fictional race. I can be as racist towards it as I want to.
If you say so.
Yeah, all right.
As long as I am tolerant of the ones that actually exist in the real world, we're good.
And we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out about Atlanteans, and we're like, yeah, let's stick those Atlanteans on the front line, save some of our men and women.
They're just underwater.
Yeah.
Hey, no, I'm not against all underwater people.
Just the green ones?
No,
that's just not helping your case of racism. It's not
just some.
I like the Little Mermaid.
Hey, I don't like all. I don't hate all the people underwater. Just them.
Just those specific.
The one played by that black guy.
Hey, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I never would say that.
Oh boy.
I wouldn't even think that. No. It's just like I said, because they weren't utilized. It's it's the midichlorian thing again. Mm-hmm. It's there in episode 1 to.
It doesn't come up again.
And it's just I think here's the thing though. I actually think Palpatine, when they're at that theater show thing, I think he like offhand kind of mentions it real quick, but it's there.
Because so I don't know if this is directly stated in the movies. I know it's like hinted at in the movies, but so Anakin's dad was supposed to be Palpatine's master's kid, because Palpatine's master like implanted midichlorians into something, and then that baby ended up being Anakin. And
actually, I have to correct you on that one.
Isn't it?
It's okay. You're close to it, but the way it's actually worded, and I think I'm not sure if I can't say that this is official because I'm not 100% sure. But what I've read is that Darth Plagueis, who was the master to Darth Sidious, had advanced dark side force powers. He could even influence the Force in order to make life. Mm-hmm. And he attempted to do that. But because he was trying to make someone that was pure dark, the Force fought back and created Anakin. That's why he's so powerful. That's why he was believed to be the chosen one. That's why the prophecy exists.
Yeah, so even when you say that, when you tell it to me that way, the word midichlorians doesn't need to come up at all.
No, I didn't. I noticed I didn't mention it.
Yeah, and so honestly, what I think they should have done, instead of saying like midichlorians are directly linked to the Force, they were like, oh, midichlorians are these microscopic things. They really like people who are really strong with the Force. So if you have a lot of midichlorians, it's probably likely that you're probably strong with the Force as well. You know, like if it was something like that, because then it's like they're not directly tied.
I can accept that.
It still has like this air of mysticism to it. Like you're like, you know, like how dogs can talk to ghosts and shit. You know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
Okay, so. You know, I think we have a firm grasp of why 4, 5, and 6 are so loved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the archetype of the stories that were set forth. It's the way the story was written. It's the way the characters developed, and it's basically everything that wasn't in 1, 2, and 3. I mean, you had a few things, and that's one of the things I want to get into is what are the redeeming qualities of episode 1, 2, and 3, because there are some.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll lead it off with this one. Natalie Portman. In episodes 1 and 2, she did a great job acting, portraying her role. Episode 3, probably not her strongest performance. There were a few things that were just like, it didn't advance her character at all. Didn't do anything for her. And if anything, it made her look weaker than what she was in the first 2.
Yeah, I feel like that's more to do with the writing though, but yeah. But yeah,
I think George Lucas just could not figure a way to write her out.
Yeah,
so he just killed her.
Natalie Portman is such a good actress. Because what's she in? Leon the Professional. She was so young in that one, but she's good in that. Like as a child,
and not to mention she won an Oscar for Black Swan.
Oh yeah, Black Swan. Well, that came way later, but yeah.
I mean, still, but I mean, it shows the caliber of actress.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's been in the game for a long time. I think she wasn't even 18 yet when she did the first Star Wars movie. Was she?
Yeah, I think she was. I think she was either 17 or 18. She was right there. Yeah, but yeah, she started acting back when, you know, she was, 13, 14?
Yeah.
I mean, and she was in big known movies at that point already. So she'd been doing it for a while. She had the experience. And, you know, while her character, when she was in Padme the Handmaiden disguise, she could be a little whiny at times. When you realize that she was actually the queen, Amidala, you understand a little bit. You know, it's not like Anakin where he's just a whiny little bitch all the time.
And honestly, that was really like a compelling part of her character, was that she was pretending to be the handmaiden. You know, so like she. You know, Qui-Gon knew. Yeah, and we know.
I mean,
but the fact that she put herself in that position, so she gave herself that perspective, and that really comes across in how she acts, is that she knows she's a queen, but she's seeing things from where she wouldn't be able to see from a throne. You know what I mean?
And I definitely think that helped her.
And so that really comes across, and like sometimes she gives attitudes because she sees something that she knows isn't right, and you know, so she'll say it like, "Oh, why are we doing it like that?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, my bad, I don't know." You know?
Yeah, but Qui-Gon did not take any of her shit whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that's another redeeming quality right there. Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon Jinn. I mean, any movie that Liam Neeson is in, I don't think I've seen a bad Liam Neeson performance. Not to say I haven't seen a bad Liam Neeson movie, but I have never seen a bad Liam Neeson performance.
He is an incredible actor. Because his voice is so strong too. I don't know. It just has this aura to it. You know, like it feels authoritative. But not in a bad way, like in a good way. Like definitely like a dad, you know, like a dad voice.
Yeah. I will find you, and I will kill you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm saying Obi-Wan because I like Obi-Wan.
Good. I'm glad you said that, because if you hadn't, I was going to.
I love Obi-Wan.
Ewan McGregor, excellent job in episode 1, 2, and 3. I think he was the absolute perfect pick to portray young Obi-Wan. He did the character so well. because he loved the character.
Even when he came back to do voiceovers in
he jumped at the chance.
Force Awakens. I was gonna say Force Unleashed. Force Awakens.
Different Star Wars.
When the directors and producers were talking about that part, like as I watched the special features about for it, they said, "Oh yeah, we asked him to come over. He came over and he came in his leather jacket on his motorcycle, all like looked like a badass, and he's like, oh hey guys, how you doing?" And then he did the voiceovers and he drove off back on his bike. And that's so cool. Like
he loved the part, and that's why I honestly believe if they end up re-greenlighting the Obi-Wan Star Wars story, they have to get him. They have to bring him back. They cannot recast him.
Yeah, and my favorite part for Obi-Wan is when this episode 3, you are the chosen. There was so much feeling in that.
There was, and it's like
the chosen one.
Unlike earlier in the movie when you have him first confronting Anakin, and Anakin's just screaming at him, saying I will not let you take her away from me. Yeah. I will not let you turn her against me. Yeah. It felt different. Mm. You didn't. I mean. I'm sorry, Hayden, I know you're a good actor. I know you've had some great films, but Anakin Skywalker was not your brightest moment.
I mean, I feel like it's not his fault.
It just wasn't believable to me.
I think what Manuel said to me when we talked about it is like you can't blame the actor for a crappy script.
Yeah.
Because I like him as Anakin. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that. I understand why he's like that. Manuel explained how he has so much stuff he had to focus on, like he was told to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, there's not how you supposed to act mad, angry, nervous, in love, all at the same time and show it. Like, not everyone's that amazing actor. Like, I liked him as Anakin, and I always will be. Like, he will always be like, even if they do like. I don't know what they'll do. I don't know what they do. If they come out with like some kind of Anakin movie or some other case like Anakin something,
I feel like the animated series was enough of it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying.
I don't think we're gonna get another movie. We already know his origin story.
I'm not saying he is, but like if they ever did, or for some reason, like I would hope they would pick him because I like him and do something.
And that's the thing too. You know what? I'll agree with you there. I would actually like to see Hayden Christensen come back to the role now after he's grown as an actor.
Yeah.
And just become better in general, and to see if he can actually bring some character growth. Like if they were to say, okay, we're gonna go back and we're gonna refilm episode 3 from start to finish, and bring back all the same actors and stuff. And I think honestly, if they were to do it now, they could probably do it so much better. And Hayden Christensen could probably do more justice to the character of Anakin than he could have. What was it, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think George Lucas. I think he wanted people to at least dislike Anakin a little bit.
Yeah,
instead of him being because this was supposed to be him as his hero. This is him in his prime, and it wasn't supposed to be till like.
But he wasn't supposed to be a whiny douchebag.
Yeah, the very end, and I think he made him like, yeah, no, you need to understand that he's very much already gonna beat Vader. It's gonna happen. Like there's no tragic, turning point. Like he's always been this, and like it just doesn't do his character justice. I think I don't think. Because the way Obi-Wan describes it in A New Hope is like, oh yeah, he was turned, he was corrupted, and it doesn't really seem that way. And I think that's partly George Lucas' fault. Is you just see him as this like rage emotion ball, not that he doesn't have the right to given the circumstances, but that's just what you see him as. You don't ever get to see his good traits. Like when you watch the animated show, like you see him as a master.
Yeah, master. With Ahsoka. He has laugh. He can be friendly.
Yeah. And so
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, thoroughly. It's really good. But you got to realize George Lucas didn't touch that.
Yeah,
right. He didn't write anything for that.
In the animated, you have a switch. He was like, okay, Anakin's okay here. He's mad here. Turn it to the right. Oh, he's sad. Let's turn it to the left. Mm-hmm. You could direct it in animation. In animation, you can go so different than acting on screen.
Yeah.
So that's why the Anakin's probably is better for you because it's able to be more flexed. Like you can keep saying Anakin was a whiny douchebag, but you got to understand he was a slave. He had to leave his mom. He was told he was a chosen one. He became a Jedi, a Padawan, when he wasn't supposed to. He has all this power to be the chosen one, but he can't do what everyone else is doing, so he's upset but he can't be upset because the Jedis can't do that. So of course he's going to be complaining. He doesn't have the training. He is like that for a reason. That's how I understand it. So calling him like a whiny douchebag, like he is that, but you can't be mad at him for it.
It's because they don't give him in the movies. They don't give him the opportunity to show the good parts, like in the animated series. Like
it is fast paced. Yeah,
there's so much they get to go more in depth, but like that trilogy is solely focused on his path to the dark side.
Yeah,
that's your end point. That's where the movie ends. When he becomes Darth Vader.
And I think that was also a detractor of episodes 1, 2, and 3. Is we already knew where it was going, so you only had so much room to sit there and play with aspects of the story. And because it was on this set path, it was just the execution was just bad.
Yeah, because I don't think they wanted it to be. Because it wasn't going to be like this shocking twist, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like we weren't going to be shocked at all. But I think they wanted to remind us that every moment that he's going to be a bad guy in the near future. That's where he's going. That's what he's going to do, and you don't get to remember at all of because Obi-Wan did love him, and there had to be a reason for it. Like there had to be his good qualities, you know. Like he has some okay moments with Padme, but it's all really cringy and weird because it's like this weird romance.
It's like hidden romance.
Yeah, and that's real weird. That's just him being nice.
But the chemistry between Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman just wasn't there.
Yeah, even though they were both like pretty young, like it just I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't like as much as I liked it. I didn't like the love scenes.
Like we knew it had to happen. Obviously,
just bang, dude, hurry! Get to the war. You got a war, dude. Go.
But I mean, just the chemistry between the actors, I just don't think was there, and I think that translated on screen. Which is why that chemistry just didn't seem to be there, even though they professed their love for one another countless times over episodes 2 and 3.
And again, I just gotta say the writing was just for him it just wasn't good, because then they gave him the line about where he talks about sand. He's like, oh, it's coarse and it's rough and it gets everywhere, and that's supposed to be like a metaphor for his past. You know, like he came from the desert planet. Of course, he hates sand. But then the way when he talks about it, he sounds pretentious and not in a way that like he actually knows what he's talking about. But he sounds like he's not trying to sound pretentious.
Yeah,
and that's what makes it like more hateable.
Yeah. Any other? I mean, well, okay. One of the biggest redeeming qualities, I guess, we have to talk about, and we talked about it a little bit already, is the fight scenes and the choreography.
Yeah,
it was great. It was absolutely great. It was so much. It was leagues above episodes 4, 5, and 6, even though 6 was pretty damn good for what it was.
You know what I'll say? I like the fighting more in 1, 2, and 3 than so far in 7 and 8.
Okay, we will get to that. I promise you, we will get to that.
No, I know, but you can't say that, and I can't. I know.
I know.
I'm not going to start the argument here, but I like it more. Like it's just,
I like how he knows it's going to become an argument.
Yeah, I know. Because Josh is going to try to shut me down. I'm just giving the. I like it more. That's a redeeming quality for me. That's why I'm always going to be like, oh yeah, fucking 1, 2, 3, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul and fucking.
That was one of their focuses, and like I know they only did it as like a sellout tactic. They're like, everybody liked the fight scenes. If we don't have any good fucking fight scenes, nobody gonna fucking like this movie. And that's pretty much like the only one they would think people do. Like, it's like, so they went all out, and like we had actual fight scenes, and and they took more from like martial arts stuff. Yeah, you know, like where they're like kicking and flipping and jumping and all this other stuff, and you know and it really meshed well, you know, because they're supposed to be like monks, like not just sword fighters, but they're also supposed to be like this monk type character where they've been trained, you know. So of course they know how to move their body and such. Whereas,
I mean, have you seen the Shaolin monks?
Exactly.
Holy fuck,
it's crazy. And in the original story, it's like I said, it's more fantasy driven, and like they fight more like swordsmen, you know, where it's like cross, hold, and then like it's a very slow thing, and it's not that's not also compelling.
And you know what? I want to point out one thing and why that works so well. Like you have in episodes 1, 2, and 3, you have the Jedi Temple established, you have the training programs established, whereas in 4, 5, and 6, you don't have that. You've got in Episode 4, you've got an old man teaching a young kid how to handle a lightsaber. Obi-Wan can't do the same moves he could do 30 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever. You know, 19 years between 3 and 4.
He's an old grizzled veteran.
And then in Episode 5, you've got a 900-year-old Muppet trying to teach Luke more ways of the Force. He can't do the same things either. You know, he knows he's dying.
Which brings me to so in Yoda's time, the time between the prequel and the original trilogy isn't that big, but they made him go fucking ape shit in the second movie for some reason. And I'm like, I didn't want that.
Oh, yeah.
I already know Yoda's like incredibly strong. He doesn't need to bounce off the walls like
the
crazy frog.
That was
when I seen him come in, I was just like, oh crap.
It was cool the first time you watch it, but when you go back now, it's like it's like the Gungans. You didn't need it.
It really didn't need it. Like he could have shown off his power in some other way. Where like
it could have just been a pure
he tried to swipe him with the thing and then like he misses because like he's just moving it.
Like when the fight first starts out, it's a test of pure force power. You could have just ended it with that. Yeah. You didn't need to go into a full lightsaber battle. We already had one.
Is that one Count Dooku does like the spin thing, like the drill spin, or does somebody else do that?
I don't think so.
Oh no, that's Palpatine in 3.
You're right.
When he attacks the Jedi Masters that come to arrest him. But it was just the whole Yoda Dooku fight scene. I mean, you could have left it with just a battle of the will of the Force, and then it would have been fine. Everybody would have been happy. Yoda would have still been just as much of a badass. And while yes, I will admit the fight scene, the lightsaber battle between the two was cool the first time you see it. Now it's just like, why? You don't need it. And then same thing with the Yoda versus Emperor Palpatine in Episode 3. It wasn't necessary. You didn't need it.
It was too over the top. Like when it stopped being about the lightsaber play and that choreography, like, it's too much. Because I remember in Episode 3 with Palpatine versus Yoda, he's like throwing the things at him, and it's like I'm like it doesn't need to be like we all know what the Force is and what it can do. Like, we don't need to see that. Like it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't make for like a good visual.
Yeah, I didn't like that part.
Yeah, it just, and then like I said, the lightsaber battles with Yoda, it's not. There's another way you could have handled it. It could have been a battle of wills, or maybe Yoda doesn't even make it to the Chancellor's chamber. Maybe he decides not to try. Maybe he solely puts all of his what? How do I want to say this? He puts all of his chips down on Obi-Wan stopping Vader.
Yeah.
I
think the lightsaber fights in the prequels did peak with the first one because the mere battle that they have with like somebody with 2 lightsabers and 2 Jedis, like that kind of. Like, that was just interesting to see.
But you cannot deny the quality of the lightsaber duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan.
I'm not saying that one's not good. That one's pretty good. But I think the best one though is just that one, the Darth.
Oh yeah, because it's the first time you ever see a dual-bladed lightsaber.
Because it's new, and then like it's still like because like even in any kind of martial art, they'll tell you that if you have to be talented to go up against 2 people. I know 2 people fighting you they'll have their own like downside to them being 2 people. They have to coordinate as well as try and be better than you, but like it's still an interesting fight to see, and like that kind of lightsaber was new at the time. They're like, oh, like 2 lightsabers.
Yeah.
Until you get to Grievous, he's got like 8 lightsabers.
Boy, Grievous.
Yeah. He's like, oh
now, one of the things that and this is going to transition into our next topic because we want to talk a little bit. It's getting late for us, and we still have a whole nother part to do. So. Episode 3 did a disservice to the character of Darth Vader. The way they allowed Hayden Christensen to portray him once he got into the suit. It was just... there were things that didn't need to happen, and of course we talked about that. And we know your opinion on his performance. We know my opinion, but his scene in Rogue One. So we're jumping up. We're jumping ahead a few years. Darth Vader's scene towards the end of Rogue One, where he's on. They've just captured the ship. He's kind of walking through the hallways, and then he turns on his lightsaber, and he just goes fucking nuts against those rebel guards. That, in my eyes, redeemed Darth Vader as a character. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Rogue One was probably, of the 2 Star Wars stories movies that we got, hands down the best. It had a good story. Maybe the character development wasn't entirely there. There were probably a few flaws in the script and the acting, but overall it was a good movie. I think even though we probably didn't need to see what happened right before Episode 4 because we kind of already knew, for what they were trying to pass to us. I mean, it entertained us. It did the job in entertaining us.
I liked it. It did feel a little unnecessary. Because when you go into Episode 4, you're like, oh, we have the Death Star plans. Like, you don't really need to, because they're at war. Like, there's any number of ways they could have got the Death Star plans.
There's multiple games too that tell you.
And so.
But not everybody plays video games.
Yeah,
so this was a way to bring that story. And sure, you would have lived the rest of your life without it. You would have been fine. You knew the backstory. You knew some rebel spies got the plans and transmitted them to Leia, and she eventually got them to the rebels. But like I said, for what we got, it was entertaining. It was enjoyable.
It was a good movie. It also had a lot of good world building elements that I liked.
Yeah,
I liked the blind monk dude.
Oh, I love him.
He was hilarious. That was a good form of comedy. In Star Wars.
Yeah, and he gave this really neat perspective on the Force because he wasn't a Jedi, and Jedis just don't really exist anymore. Into like when you get to the original trilogy and then into the sequel trilogy, there are no Jedis anymore. And
the Force is with me, and I am one with the Force.
Yeah, and it's just it makes this interesting. Like, well, why do people still believe in the Force if there's no Jedi? Like, and then if you are if you are proficient with the Force, and and it's and you're connected with it, like what does that mean? Like, what does that do for you? Like, and then you see what he can do, and it's nothing like crazy, but he does like walk through an open gunfire and then doesn't get hit. You know what I mean? And then like it's just like little things like that that's really interesting because like the more you get accustomed to what the Force is and what it can do, I feel like that. Well, I mean, and then it's not technical either.
Yeah, but at this point too, you still had a lot of people alive who knew who the Jedi and who knew what the Jedi were.
Yeah,
they knew their struggle against the dark side. Excuse me.
Bless you.
I will cut that out in post. That's why I'm talking about it right now, so that way I know where to cut it out. But anyways, you had people who still knew of what happened to the Jedi. Sure, there was this public announcement by Palpatine that the Jedi turned against him and tried to kill him. But I think a lot of people knew that that's not the Jedi. Like, yeah, sure, we kind of have to go along with it because you've got stormtroopers on every block, but. We know you're a lying ass.
It also goes to and this is what one of my my friend who said he enjoys the prequels. That was a kind of cool thing to do with the world building, because then you get into what happens a lot with a powerful dictator type. You get propaganda. What propaganda can do to you, because propaganda isn't always as crazy as the Nazis have. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's very simple, because if you tell somebody that what's one thing we think here, when you talk about Africa and you think Africa is a third world country, the entirety of Africa is a third world country, but then if you show somebody a picture of South Africa and then how developed it is, You're like, oh, I thought they were all like living in huts and stuff. And like, no,
exactly.
That's just kind of like the notion that that we as a society has built is that that's just what Africa looks like to us, and it's not always like intentional, but like of course with a dictator it is, but it's really powerful, especially when you're a force user and how you can manipulate people's perceptions.
Yeah,
like that's incredible. Like you can like. It's crazy to think that because then you meet people like Han, and Han's like, oh, that's just a bunch of hocus pocus. Of course, that doesn't really exist, and that can kind of give you the view of like post Episode 3 Palpatine has done to like the world at large. It's like, yeah, nobody believes in the Force anymore. Nobody thinks it's a real thing, and whatever. Even if they did, that they don't want to fuck with it at all, because of what I've done and made people think. I feel like that's a good world building tool. But yeah.
Now, okay, so now you mentioned Han Solo and his not believing in the Force, and I think he did a little bit, but it's just like it was something that he never witnessed firsthand himself. Mm-hmm. But that leads into what our last little bit that we're going to talk about here, and that's Solo, a Star Wars story. Mm-hmm. Now, Ted, you and I have both seen this, and we both have very different opinions on this movie. Manuel, you haven't seen this. So.
I have seen tidbits of it, but I have not watched the whole movie.
Well, it's generally to sum it up real quick is, it's the backstory of Han Solo, how he got to where he was, how he got the Millennium Falcon, how he became a smuggler.
I know Calrissian is in it.
Yep.
Lando.
How he meets Lando Calrissian. Yeah. It explains the whole Kessel Run. Trying to make sense of.
I wish they didn't do that. I wish they just never touched it. Like honestly, I didn't need to know what the Kessel Run was.
No, we didn't. We didn't need to see it, and that I will agree that was something that was unnecessary. I mean, it was cool to see on the screen, but it was not necessary at all. It was another midichlorian thing. Mm-hmm. You're taking away from the wonder of the fact that Han Solo is this. This rogue with no history, mm-hmm. but yet he's he's also this soft-hearted, kind man, who is willing to fight for a cause.
Yeah, because I think it does his character and the story better when you're told things about him, and then you get to see his actions, like maybe not necessarily line up with what you've been told. Or what he's directly told you.
Once again, it's just a taking away of the mystery.
Yeah, and you kind of get to figure out like, oh well, there's a line between what he does and what he says, and then that's where he really is as a person. And then when you give too much of like, so one of the things I was just talking about this when I was watching Guardians of the Galaxy 2 the other day was I like in sci-fi movies when they just say stuff, and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like I like that, and I'm like I don't want them to explain it too much to me, like. So the scene I'm talking about in particular in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where he's talking about, where Sylvester Stallone's character is talking to Yondu, and he's like, oh, the horns of whatever and the colors of whatever will not flash over your grave, whatever. Like, I just thought that was space nonsense, and I like that. But they did it really well by showing me what that stuff is. Like, they didn't talk about it, but then at the end of the movie, you see it. I'm like, oh, it's that, and like that's a good way to do that stuff, you know, because I do like just the jargon, like when people just say things and I'm like, oh, okay, you're just saying that, and nobody's gonna. I don't like being talked down to, pretty much. I don't like things having things explained to me like I'm a child. Mm-hmm. Like I like to just see it and then I can piece it together myself. You know what I mean?
So real quick, Ted, going back to our differing opinions on the movie, what is it? What are the a couple of things that you really didn't like about themovie? What made it not enjoyable for you? Oh boy!
Here we go.
He's laughing
he
already. That's not good.
All right, so
Solo.
He can't even take himself seriously.
With Solo, I feel like I didn't even know jack shit about Han Solo, honestly, and that's because Han Solo to me as a character was in 4, 5, and 6, and whatever they show in 7 and 8, because. When I growing up watching those movies, I knew anything and everything I needed to know about Han Solo there. You talk about how you said it explains. You said Solo explains how he got the Millennium Falcon. I'm pretty sure we heard that story millions of times before 4, 5, and 6, and 7 and 8. Between those things, we heard it. We know it. It's already. I didn't need to see it again. I didn't need to see it visually. Like Manuel says, I don't need to. I just need to hear about it, and I don't really need an explanation for it. Lando Calrissian being in there, I feel like that was a plot so people can know more about Lando. So when he's in, since we've seen the trailer, he's in episode 9, so they can know who he is without going back and say, "Hey, go watch episode 5." There's a lot of people that it didn't like the actor didn't really pin me as a Han Solo person that I grew up knowing who Han Solo was.
That also I did not like who's the actor.
It's like, how are you gonna say Han Solo is this guy, this smuggler, this person who's I love you, I know, but he didn't paint me as that. It looked like a guy,
a scoundrel.
Yeah, he did. He looked like a guy who was paid to try to act like it, but he wasn't. And I didn't need to know all that about Han Solo because I knew enough about him. So if you want a backstory about Boba Fett, that is okay because we didn't really get to know much about him. If you
I read a book about him, though. So.
Yeah, well, we know about stuff about him in the books and other characters.
He was in the animated series
in
too.
Rogue One. Rogue One, you say might not have been necessary, but it's just a different perspective on things. Where it didn't connect to Jedi, it didn't connect to it was just a war movie for for the movie to like how they got the plans.
I think the difference between these two movies is like one, like I keep saying, like world building, which is always good. Like people like that, like, and then because you don't need to ever reference any of these characters ever again. If you do, it's cool. Like sometimes like it's a little nod to like, oh yeah, I watched that movie. Not everybody watched that movie, but I watched it, and so they say like, oh, that pilot's name or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's her. With Solo, you're just putting so much focus on this character, and then it's going to limit you later when you want to bring up stuff. You're like, well, I wanted to introduce something new, but then it conflicts with something we committed to in its past now.
What'd you say? What'd you tell me before? Like Star Wars is trying to become this cinematic universe when it already can't because it already has a blueprint of where to go in a way.
Yeah.
And I don't think Solo is needed. I really don't. And I feel, and also, it's another thing where when you see The Last Jedi and you see the dice, I feel like that was also be like, oh, guess what? We're having a Solo movie. Like I didn't need to know that. I didn't need to know where the dice came from because I already know as a person who loves Star Wars, the dice were never there. They were never there.
Nope. Yeah. That's where you're wrong. They were always there.
But there was like, but when you
they made it bigger in episode 8 and Han's
they
and
made it
Solo.
Bigger, but did we need it?
No, and I'll agree with you. Hey, listen, I will actually agree with you. We didn't need the movie, but just like Rogue One, we didn't need it. But I think what we got
Rogue One was good. I enjoyed it. A lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people say that's probably the only one. When you say Rogue One to Solo, everyone's going to say Rogue One. Everyone's going to say Rogue One. Why? Because there was a bunch of people we didn't know.
And it didn't have any ties to anything.
Nothing.
There was a lot of stuff they could have done.
Everyone died. Spoiler alert. No one cares.
Yeah, and then it's like,
but it's so amazing.
It's sad, but then like you get the problem that the prequels had is that when you know where this story is going to go, you already know the end point. So there's not a lot of compelling stuff you can do. Of course, it can be done well. Prequels can be done incredibly well. I know that there are some movies that do that. But it puts you in a corner when you decide that, like, I want to talk about what happened before this. And then you put yourself in that corner, well, you already know what your next act is. And you have to make sure that this ties up with that next act. And I know there are some movies who, like, do some crazy shit. Like, oh, this is a prequel to this thing. But then at the very end, you realize it's not because a bunch of shit went off the rails. I know there's, like, one movie that did that. I can't remember what it was. But it was, like, some weird sci-fi shit. But, yeah. But, like, that's never going to happen. Like, you're never, like... Because and that's the kind of things that fans hate too. When if you want to surprise them at the end of this movie, where you already know the outcome and where this character is gonna be next, where you have something that you know for a fact in that next act be a lie, and for whatever confounded reason, that's the only way you can get a twist like that. And then people hate that. They're like, well, you told me one thing. But now that I went back, I found out that's a lie. Now I can't trust you as a story builder, as a person writing this, and as a viewer, I can't trust you anymore because you're going to tell me this, and then I know for a fact that it can turn around and not be that, and that's just an inherent problem with prequels, and they're putting too much focus on it because they haven't done it that well so far. I don't think they should keep doing it.
Yeah, and another thing, what I didn't like about it is I know how you say you hate how Jar Jar is like the Three Stooges. The actors, my boy Woody, I liked him. He was
Woody
okay.
Harrelson.
Yeah, I liked him. He was okay. But the other characters, when they first meet, when they run into Han Solo, well, not after the part where where Han Solo was like, oh, they told him that he was gonna be like a driver or whatever, and then they show him in war, and then Woody Harrelson or whatever comes in and says, oh, I'm the one in command, blah blah blah, and then they get back to camp, and he's walking, and he overhears their conversation, right? And they look to him like, who are you? And then like the way they're talking, like it just made me mad because it felt like they were just joking around. Like the guy with whatever he was wearing, he sounded like a goofy. Oh, what are you gonna do? That's what he sounded like to me. Like he was just joking around.
I kind of want to watch this movie now,
dude. Like I told you about, I was like, the actors don't even seem like they're acting. Like I don't even know. It's like it's not funny. Like they're trying to be funny, but it's not.
It's a weird thing that I just noticed with all of the newer movies that I've noticed is just the way some of the direction goes. It feels off. It feels not genuine. It feels kind of weird. Like it feels like it's supposed to be I keep going to Guardians because Guardians did this so well. The way that they intersect humor into the actual serious moments, and then they kind of gloss over it. But that doesn't fit in every narrative, and it doesn't fit in every setting. Like Guardians started from the ground up as that, and I feel like a lot of people are trying to put that more in other sci-fi-ish movies. Where like, oh, we don't need to take it serious 100% of the time. But like some of them are like, this is like a space drama. Like that's what these movies are supposed to be. It's supposed to be a drama. Like don't. Like, if the comedy doesn't fit, you don't make it fit. But they don't like adhere to that. They keep trying to make some of these things like funny, but it breaks you out of it. Like it breaks you out of some of the seriousness. Like they don't do it right.
That's why when a lot even with the new stuff, which I told you, I know you're gonna say we'll talk about it later. Even with the new stuff and the jokes they have, and then with some stuff, the jokes they try to have in Solo, I'm just like. If everyone has a problem with Jar Jar Binks, how is no one complaining about this? Because this is not funny. Your mama jokes are not funny. These little accents you guys are trying to try to be funny in a situation, it's not funny. Mm-hmm. Subtle humor is okay. Like, it's good. Like Manuel said, it's supposed to be like a space drama. This out-of-pocket way that there was never liked before, it's not needed. I feel like I didn't need it.
Because you can still be kind of cheeky and cheesy with, like especially in those older movies, like the one-liners, like the really dramatic one-liners, whenever they just say something like really like they're like I can't even think of it. Cause there's a good example in the new ones where Finn is fighting Phasma, and she like looks up and calls him scum, and it's like this dramatic thing, but then he just snaps back. He's like rebel scum, and then like kicks the shit out of her. Like that was okay because it was a little cheeky, but not too cheeky. It was still dramatic, and it fit the situation. But then there's like a scene like. That happens right there too. I can't remember like exactly what happens, but like it didn't.
He calls her Chrome Dome, and it just doesn't
Chrome
fit.
Dome. And then when he thinks he falls and she's looking down, he's like heads up, and he's like above her. I'm like heads up. All right.
The audio of that made me laugh.
Yeah, I'm just like, dude, it's just like that's how I banged my head into the wall when I heard it. I was like, oh my god. And then what else about Solo? It's just I didn't need to know more about Han. If you're a fan, you heard the stories. Unless you think they're lying, you're not going to believe it and you're going to want to see it. I didn't need to know. The Han Solo I know is built from 4, 5, and 6, set in 7. I think I said 8 last time, but he's not there. Sorry, guys.
I think they just shouldn't have made...
I feel like they're just trying to find a character which everyone liked. And like, all right, money.
Where's the money at?
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you wanted more
we see what happened.
Everything else Disney.
You shouldn't have killed Han Solo.
Yeah.
You could have had way more Han Solo.
Yeah, way more Han Solo.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I think the death of Han Solo was actually necessary, and like I said, we'll get into that. I hate to cut you guys off, but this one is... I mean, we are running...
You want me to end it? Han Solo wasn't needed. Han Solo movie wasn't needed.
I will... here's the thing. I will acquiesce...
Ghost. Dude, I'd be laughing if they did that. I'd be laughing.
I will acquiesce to your statement that the Solo movie was not needed. But I'm going to end this one with saying... I thought it was still entertaining. I thought the overall story, I thought there were funny parts. Mind you, there were some misses. There were some bad parts. Not everything's great, but I thought the overall movie hit the mark, from an entertainment standpoint.
Can I ask you? So I haven't seen this movie yet, and I know like the plot and everything. Like that's all been spoiled for me. But if you were to rate this movie like from 0 to 100, where would you put it?
Oh crap!
Because if you can't say a solid 90, then it might not be that great.
Yeah,
honestly, if I were to get from out of 100, I'd probably give it a 72.
72. Okay, yeah, that's a passing.
I'm not saying it's the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. I'm not saying it's even the greatest movie ever made, because I know there are flaws with it. I know there are bad things about it. I know there's problems with the script. I know there's problems with the acting.
Yeah. See, so a 72 sounds about right. From what I've heard, like a 72, like
but to me,
it'll get you into the next
still,
grade. But
to me, it was still entertaining. It was still entertaining. I mean, both me and my younger brother, we watched it together. Mm-hmm. At the end of the movie, we were like, "Damn, that was good." You know, it was better than what we expected it to be.
I expected it to be here,
and
it was down here.
No,
yeah,
no.
That trailer they showed with the dun dun dun, and they showed all the acting scenes. I was like, "Whoa, okay, this movie might be cool." Okay, watched it on
but
Netflix.
I remember some of the talks that we had. You were not going into that movie with a lot of optimism.
I wasn't going into it.
You were not going into it,
but
because you were still coming off of 8. You were still coming off
about that later. just like everyone else is telling me.
Yeah.
But like I told you, when I seen the trailer, I was going to give it a chance. I didn't go see it in theaters because you already knew I didn't want to go see it. So yeah. I was waiting for a DVD, and I didn't want to go to the theaters to see it. I was going to wait till DVD, but guess what?
It came out on Netflix.
Straight to Netflix. Hello,
so I watched it for free, and I was like, man, I was disappointed. I almost canceled Netflix. I was disappointed I bought Netflix. I was like, dude, like, no way. And that leads off to, like, what happened after Solo. A lot of these spin-off stories got put on hold.
Got canceled.
Yeah.
Get on hold, and then spoiler alert.
I don't think those are... Because I think they tried to make the subject for fans, because of course the fans fucking love Han Solo. Yeah. But then in making the movie, they left the fans out, and they're like, let's make a movie for a general audience. And that's really all you got. You got like a general audience type movie. Yeah, like, there's nothing wrong with those. That feeling. But the spirit of the original things aren't there, and like that's just the problem with a lot of newer movies in general, is that this was made so as many people will come and watch it as possible, and not let's make a compelling story with these characters that these people love. You know, and that's just a product of like the Hollywood right now. So
yeah,
you know, that's
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. And I think, you know, a lot of people were missing the witty banter between Han and Leia. You know, that's something that just it's not there. You know, that was very prevalent.
Who's there with him? Is Chewie in this movie?
Chewie is in the movie, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, you don't really know what the fuck Chewie's saying, so I mean...
yeah,
but here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Good thing
Han Solo does, and he can in the movie he can actually speak Wookiee.
Are we gonna believe that?
So Han
he actually does speak Wookiee in the movie.
Yeah, that's,
he does.
If you want to call it speaking Wookiee.
Okay. All right. I'm a little interested.
I'll say this: the performance of Chewie was great.
Chewie,
it's worth watching at least once.
Yeah,
once,
just to know, like, just then I know, you know, all the shit that's in there. You know what I mean? Like,
I wouldn't be opposed to watching it again. Like, if I was watching all the movies in a marathon, you know, it's there. Yeah, honestly, like I said, I was entertained by it.
I like the idea that there is more to marathon, because one of my favorite fucking things is marathoning Lord of the Rings. Now that there's
and I would get along very well.
Like, oh my god, I just fucking like. I'm like, oh hey guys, let's marathon Lord of the Rings. They're like, okay, how many movies is it? 6 movies? How long are they? 3 hours each? And I'm like, that's a day. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, I got work. I'm like, I don't care.
Hey, next time I marathon all 6 movies, I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. Do you have the director's cut for the originals?
Oh yeah.
Go where that fucking.
I've got the extended cuts that are actually
the drinking scene with Gimli and Legolas, where he's like 10 beers in. He's like, I think I'm starting to feel something. I'm like, that relates to me. That's how I am. Everybody's like shit faced, and I'm like, I think I'm a little dizzy.
All right, guys. So that's it. That's gonna do it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. This one was actually a little bit longer than I expected it would be, but I think we had a lot of fun doing it, and I think we're gonna have even more fun doing part 2. Like I said, so stay tuned for that. It's coming up right now.